All right, so the Army Corps has lots of different rules when it comes to permits. We've talked about them in the past. There's regional general permits, there's nationwide permits, there's LOPs, and there's SPs, all of which can be harder to get or easier to get depending on the type of the permit. We talked about those in the past, so I won't touch on them again in this video, but two fast types of permits to get are RGPs and NWPs. What RGPs and NWPs, regional general permits and nationwide permits, are basically blanket permits that get you approved faster. Now, nothing is fast with the Army Corps, of course. Everything takes a long time, but it is about half the speed of doing the other kind. You go from a year to on average about 6 months to do these permits. And what they are is basically the Army Corps has come up with a list of criteria. If your project design meets that list of criteria, which is what we always try to push people to do, if you meet that list of criteria, then you get approved faster. I basically say, hey, if we take a project and it has X, Y, Z, blah, 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 then we don't need to look into it as much and we can put it through the faster process called JAXPO. I won't bore you with the details of what that acronym means, but it's called JAXPO. This video, we're talking about TDOCs specifically. So TDOCs are exactly what you think. It's a walkway that goes out with a T on the end. They can be the length of your shoreline. They could be however far out to get you past your mangroves, whatever you need. But TDOCs are very common. It's a good way to park a lot of dockage when your canal is not super wide, because if you are going to stern or bow into the property, perpendicular shoreline, then you're going to most likely exceed, especially on canals, your 25% rule or your 10% rule, like we talked about in the last video. So then when you go out and then run the dock parallel to your shoreline, you can park the boats parallel to your shoreline as well, and you get more docking area. So the rules with RGPs for TDOCs is this: 4-foot wide access walkway, and that goes for most any docks, but you can only have a 4-foot wide access walkway that goes out to it. They want it to be 5 feet above the average high tide line, unless you can do a survey to prove that there's no resources in the water, which would be corals, seagrasses, etc. So other than that, it's going to be 5 feet above high, or they want it low, or sorry, if you want it lower, then you have to prove that there's no resources. The other rule is this: the actual T head portion can only be 5 feet wide. It used to be 6 feet wide, actually, until they redid it a couple years ago. So the RGPs and NWPs, they redo every 5 years. They come up with a new set of criteria list every 5 years. The last one expired a couple years ago. They came out with a new one that's now good till June 24th of 2026, and they actually restricted it from 6 feet wide on the T head to 5 feet wide, which in my opinion is a big difference. Going from 6 to 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a big deal. So now if you want to go to 6, you have to go through that much harder process again. Costs more money, takes a long time. They look at it a lot more in depth. You're scrutinized under a different set of criteria, etc. So when you want to do a TDOC, just know that it's a 4-foot wide access walkway. Almost all the time it's 5 feet above mean high, unless you do a benthic survey to prove there's no resources in the water. And it's going to be a 5-foot wide TDOC, 5-foot wide T head on the end. And that is allowed to run the entire length of your shoreline. So 75-foot long shoreline, 75-foot long T head, 5 foot wide. And that's the parameters for TDOCs under an RGP.